This other term, the Great Resignation. The words "I quit" that we're hearing from employees. The U.S. Labor Department reported that 4 million people quit their jobs in April of 2021 and 3.6 million in May. 7.6 million people in April and May. And also studies are showing that 41% of the workforce is considering leaving their employer this year. We know that people are, again, looking for more meaningful cultures. So the war for talent is on. Talented humans, many of which that are listening to this right now. This time, in the midst of the Great Resignation, the big shift, the future of work, culture has never been more important. Culture is our greatest competitive advantage. These cultures don't just magically happen. They have to be led, to be created, to co-created with people together. Leading during these times is as important as ever. And so, of course, leadership matters. What are some leadership keys as we're trying to lead during these times of the big shift and the Great Resignation? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hello, everyone. It's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. We are on Season 5. Season 5 is here. It's hard to believe that we are already in Season 5. Well over 80-plus episodes have been recorded and shared and are being amplified out there in the world. So thank you so much. There's been great energy. There's been excitement, and it's been so fun to watch this podcast growing and connecting with more and more people around the world. So thank you for everybody out there who has been a listener from day one. And also welcome to those people who have jumped in recently or joining the podcast. Obviously, if you've been here from day one, then you know the journey we've been on. But if you are new to the podcast, then I invite you to go back and listen to the previous season. So many great interviews and great micro pods that I think will engage your mind and heart. So I hope you will go back and do that. This is a place. This is a space in your day, in your week. The point of this is to create time for you as a human, as a leader, as you think about your own life, your own work, the culture that you're trying to create with your organization, with your team, your business, or just your family, your friends, your community. This is a place for you to step back, to think, to be filled with some positive and encouraging thoughts, and then also to lead you down some content that hopefully will engage your mind and heart and help you think about some important questions and things that will help you along your path. I am more convinced of this than ever, that authentic leadership and compelling cultures are needed more than ever in the world that we live in today. We need authentic leadership. We need cultures, groups of people that are aligned, looking in the same direction, and are compelled and excited to be a part of something greater than themselves. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Excited for Season 5. We got kicked off already, and I'm excited for Episode 2 already. Before we dive into today, will you do me a favor? Will you just do me this one quick favor? Take a minute right now, and if you would, rate this podcast. I hope it's 5 stars because that really helps. And also leave a review, a positive review, in your words of why this kind of thinking about authentic leadership and culture and mindset and focus is important. And then also, I hope you'll consider sharing this with the people in your life, on your team, throughout your organization that ought to be a part of these conversations. Because whether we like it or not, these are the ways in which these messages are amplified and are shared further in the world. When people take the time to rate, review, to share it with their friends. That's just the way that it works, and I wish I didn't have to say that, but I appreciate everybody that just takes 1 minute to do me that favor and help us amplify these messages further into the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In today's episode, we're going to be talking, this is really part 2 of this series where we're talking about navigating the quote-unquote future of work. Part 2 of talking about navigating what people are referring to as the future of work. In the last episode that you may recall, if not, go back and listen to it. I invite you to do that. In the last episode, we talked about this idea of the future of work. We defined kind of what that is, or that term that people are using, and also talking about what the trends are telling us about the future of work. As companies around the globe have been transitioning with the quote-unquote back to work, obviously some are back in buildings, back in offices, back, to quote-unquote normal. Others are in some type of hybrid, people working remotely, still virtually. And then there are some organizations and businesses, of course, that have gone or are staying completely remote and virtual. So wherever you are along that spectrum, we're in this new era. We're in a new era of in-person work, in-person experiences, and also navigating that remote work, the virtual environment, and also just navigating our way through work-life balance without losing a focus on performance and results and getting everybody in our team and organization looking in the same direction and, again, accomplishing a mission that's greater than us. We are in the midst of this kind of creation of what is people are referring to as the future of work. So today is part 2 of that discussion, and we're going to be talking about tips for leading during this time of in the future of work. There have been some other phrases that have been shared, one being referred to as the big shift, this shift of the way that work is being done, this shift that's happening in the world and in our consciousness and our thinking. And then also another phrase, the great resignation. I'll share some stats and trends again of things that have happened over the last few months that are making people again think about this future of work and how do we lead during these times of a big shift, of this great resignation, and also obviously this idea of the future of work. So that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. The future of work, that phrase again, I will just continue to say, is still being defined. It's still being discovered. It's still being imagined of what the future of work is going to be like. And again, with many of the teams and organizations, actually all of the teams and organizations that I'm lucky to support across the country and around the globe, to support them with leadership development, developing leaders and thinking, development of culture, helping them proactively lead and shape the culture they want, and clarity around mission, vision, and values. Every single company and organization is different with how they are navigating this future of work, how they're approaching in-person experiences, how they're approaching remote and leveraging virtual tools. Everybody is different. So everybody is the future of work is still being defined. It's still being discovered. It's still being imagined. So wherever your team and organization is along that spectrum, know that this is still being discovered. But together, every leader, every team, every organization has the opportunity with their people to reimagine what kind of a work environment do we want to create? What kind of culture do we want to create? And again, the purpose and the reason why we exist and why we get to have the jobs we have is when our performance and the results can match and we can be stronger together, stronger when we come together and are aligned for a mission that's greater than ourselves. So this talk about the future of work, there are some trends, some things that are happening in the world right now that we need to have our eyes on. And there's been some research that has emerged during the strange times of the last 2 years or so. So here's some things we know. Surveys and studies and all this. A recent study just came out not too long ago. I've referenced it on future pods. So again, you can go back and listen to those. But studies have showed that 9 out of 10 people now, 9 out of 10 employees now say that they will actually take a pay cut in order to work in a more meaningful culture. So 9 out of 10 employees right now in the world are saying, hey, culture is the most important thing for me. And I'm willing, all things being equal, consider, compensation. Compensation, of course, always has to be fair. But people are saying they'd even take a pay cut to work as a part of a more meaningful culture, a culture that helps them feel like they're contributing, helps them feel valued, helps them that where they have a voice and they feel like they're a part of something greater than themselves, that they are a part of helping to build. So 9 out of 10 people are saying, hey, I'd actually take a pay cut to be a part of a culture like that. But also, when we assume just all things being equal, and if they're couple of jobs somebody's deciding between, if the compensation and the benefits are basically at a level playing field, then we know that culture is where they're going to lean. We know that engaging the minds and hearts of people is plays an enormous role in certainly the stat that I just shared, but we also know that it plays an enormous role. It's a huge component to performance. That we know that many people have become burnout during the pandemic. We know this. We know that people have been challenged. We know that people certainly have been struggling and trying to find that work-life balance. We know some people have been, while some have been challenged and really, struggling with this kind of work-life balance and remote work versus in-person work and all that, we also know that others have realized that they've loved it, that they've thrived in kind of a remote work environment in ways that maybe they didn't know they would, and that the flexibility of their lifestyle has been a game changer and what they want more of in the future. And so organizations, again, and teams and cultures are having to work through all this and try to co-create and negotiate together. What is it that we want to do? What kind of environment do we want to create to optimize our culture, but also maximize and optimize, of course, our results? And so every team and organization we know is what they're doing right now is they're engaging their people. Some are starting to do that back in person together. Those off-site meetings and retreats and conventions and conferences, so many of which that I speak at, those are beginning to happen again in person, which again, you've heard me say there's power in congregation. So it's so great to be in the same room and space with people. But also we know that some places that hasn't started yet back again, and that we're still, and I believe we're always going to be leveraging these virtual opportunities too. Virtually, we have to engage the minds and hearts of our people as well. So this combination of when to engage virtually and when to engage people in person is going to continue to be important as we develop leaders and cultures in the future. This other term, the Great Resignation, that this has been happening. And the reason why this has become a term is because it's become a trend as well. The words "I quit" that we're hearing from employees has never been reached. It's never been higher. We've reached record highs of the number of people that have quit their jobs, employees that have quit or resigned over the last few months. Now, there really isn't a surprise to this. It's surprising when somebody does resign, of course, but across the trends and the research, as we step back and we think about the context of what people have been through, we know that the last 2 years have been so challenging, and many people have been struggling. And many people are just, with the pandemic and everything that's been happening in the world, that people are just kind of burnt out. And so we know that there's good reason, at least for why maybe this trend is. But still, we need to be aware of this, is that this trend of people, quitting their jobs and resigning. The U.S. Labor Department reported that 4 million people quit their jobs in April of 2021. And 3.6 million in May. So 7.6 million people in April and May. And also studies are showing that 41%, surveys coming back, 41% of the workforce is considering leaving their employer this year. So we know this. We know that people, for whatever reason, are burnt out. Also, the pandemic and everything that's been happening in the world has caused people in some really positive ways to step back and reevaluate their life and what kind of work they want to be in and what kind of environment that they want to be a part of. We know that people are, again, looking for more meaningful cultures. And we know that the employee experience And being a part of a culture is so important. Again, 9 out of every 10 people say they'd take a pay cut to work for a more meaningful culture. So the war for talent is on. The war for talent. There's the big shift that's happening is that talented humans, many of which that are listening to this right now, so many skilled and talented people that are out there in the world are there's going to be a shifting over the next few years of talent where people consider where is it that they want to be, where do they want to be a part of, and what is the culture that they feel the most connected to and that they want to be a part of continuing to create together. And so, as I've always said, culture is our competitive advantage. And so at this time, in the midst of the great resignation, the big shift, the future of work, culture has never been more important. Culture is our greatest competitive advantage because as people start to figure out where they want to go, if your culture, if your team is one where they feel compelled, that the mission is clear, the vision is compelling, and the values, the meaningful culture that's being created within the walls and outside of the walls resonates with them, that's where they'll end up going. And so, of course, leadership matters. These cultures don't just magically happen. They have to be led, to be created, to co-created with people together. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. What are some leadership keys as we're trying to lead during these times of the big shift and the great resignation and this idea of the future work? What are some leadership keys that we can think about? But before we go into that, we're going to take a quick break, and let's pause for just a quick break, and we'll be right back before we dive into some keys for leading during the great resignation, the big shift, and the future of work. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, bring people back together in person, and continue to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually. So whether you're planning that next event, that power in congregation, the power and the energy that comes from bringing all your people into the same room, into the same space for that important meeting or conference, and you need a powerful keynote speech or facilitated team discussion or facilitated conversation that is the currency for change about leadership, about the culture that you're trying to create together, or the mindset that is needed to navigate all that is in front of you, whether you're planning that in person or you need to do that virtually. I hope that we can be a resource to you and support you in that effort. If so, contact us at jasonvbarger.com, at jasonvbarger.com, if we can partner with you to help engage the minds and hearts of your people in these important times. Leading during these times is as important as ever. I've just laid out to you, leading in this environment has never been more important. Again, leadership and culture, the culture that we create is as important as ever. But it's also been heightened right now because of all the statistics that I just shared with you about the future of work, the big shift, the great resignation. Everything is on steroids a little bit right now. People's nerves are exposed. People, again, are looking around. And as I have experienced within, again, the companies and organizations that I'm so grateful to serve and to support, but also in my research and study and dialogue with many other companies, is that I absolutely believe that right now people are thirsty. People are thirsty for authentic leadership and meaningful cultures in the world today. They want to be somewhere where they feel like they are contributing, again, to a mission that's bigger than them, not just a isolated job, but where their job is connected to a mission that's greater than them, a place where they feel cared for, they feel listened to, they feel like they as a human are valued, and also a place where they feel like they are participating, they are co-creating that culture. And so right now I want to share just 4 quick keys that leaders are doing and thinking about right now in order to create these kind of cultures and create these kind of environments for the people as we lead through this big shift and this great resignation and this kind of co-creating the future of work. Some keys to leadership right now in the world. The first one is the word trust. We have to talk about the word trust. in order to lead during these times of the big shift and the great resignation, we have to build trust with each other. Now, I'll invite you to go back and listen to a podcast that I did called Trust the Process. Just Google Trust the Process and my name, Jason Barger, or go back through the episodes in the past seasons to find it. But Trust the Process, where I dive deeper into this word trust. But right now, the word trust is as important as ever. Employees and employers, leaders and teammates, everyone needs to be building trust with one another. And we know that trust is something that's bartered. It's earned every single day. To just say blindly trust us doesn't work. So we have to be proactive about what are we doing in order to build trust with each other. Again, go back and listen to the episode Trust the Process, and they will talk about, well, why wouldn't an employee trust you as a leader? There are some reasons why, and that we need to be aware of. But we need to be thinking and focused as leaders is how can we be raising the level of trust within our organization? That's number one. Number two key is transparency. Right now, in the midst of shifting, that's so much that is shifting in the world right now, in the midst of a time when people are quitting and or are fed up or burn out, all of those things, we need to make sure that we as leaders and as we communicate with our people that we are being transparent with people. We need to make sure that we're being transparent with them. Hey, here's the good of everything that's happening. Here are the challenges that we're facing. And also here's what we're doing next and how you might fit into this and how we need and want your partnership. We have to be transparent in a world where so much feels like it's changing outside of us, that when people start to get, and employees start to get scared, that they feel like so much is out of their control, that they don't really know what's happening, and things seem like hidden agendas or not full truths, or something's not being shared with them, it raises that level of distrust. So we need to build trust, and we certainly need to be transparent along the way. The third key right now for leaders is we need to build empathy, and we need to show empathy with people around us. Again, people, no matter where you are on that spectrum of challenged, of struggling, of loss, of mental health and your challenges based on everything that you've been facing over the last 2 years, or whether you're somebody that feels like they're thriving right now and where you are in the world and everything seems to be aligned. We still, leaders right now, need to be socially aware and be able to identify and to show empathy for the people on their teams, and then be able to sit with them so that then we can make a connection back to the fourth key. The fourth key right now is employees and companies and teams, they need to see this is where we need your values to be in action. You've heard me, again, past episodes, you hear me talking about culture shaping and language that drives behavior and how important core values are, and to have language that's gonna drive and point people through to be the compass for your journey as an organization, to help be that kind of, the language helps set the temperature. This is what we're aiming for. This is the temperature we're trying to create. It's in these times where, when it's authentic and it's compelling, is where our values that we talk about as a team or as an organization, we also can see them coming to life in action. We can see them, that people, your employees and your teammates can see that, hey, these aren't just words we say, these are actions that we actually do. And so right now, leaders need to be making sure that they're thinking proactively about how I can be building trust with the people around me, and again, knowing that it's earned and negotiated and bartered every single day. How can I be clear and be transparent with the communication so that nothing feels like it's hidden or there's some other agenda? We need to create caring connections with people and show empathy. And then we need people to see that the values are in action, that these values that we talk about, here's what we are proactively doing to put them into action. The best leaders, teams, and organizations right now, as we navigate our way through all of this, are proactively creating space to engage the minds and hearts of their people. They are having those off-site meetings. They are having getting back to those annual meetings, those conferences, those conventions, those important rallying points for their team. And whether they're doing them in person, which again, some are starting to do and are able to do that. And whenever you are able to have that power of congregating and be in the same space, I think you will realize how important and valuable that is. And others, when they're not able to do that, or in between personal, in-person experiences, they are leveraging these virtual tools to make sure they are engaging the minds and hearts of their people virtually. And as you hear me say all the time, conversations are the currency for change. So that means the best leaders and team cultures on the planet are the ones that are right now, as we navigate our way through all of this stuff, are proactively creating environments to have important conversations with their people, to bring them into and engage their minds and hearts so that everybody can get looking in the same direction and then move forward together in alignment with your values. It's about relationship. And right now we can't just assume that we can scatter everywhere across the world and just, expect our people to quote unquote just do their jobs. We need to make sure that we are building relationships to bring them, building trust and transparency. And we're building that kind of empathy with each other, and that we are then aligning ourselves to put action aligned with our values into practice. Those are the places that are navigating their way through these times. There's also a return on the investment. Now, many people want, well, what's the return on this investment? Well, hopefully the return is we just have greater engaged human beings and cared for people, and the impact of that in people's lives is significant. Hopefully that's enough. But others that are looking for statistics around, how does this impact the mission of whatever we come together as an organization? Well, there's actually a return on that investment. The return on these efforts around employee experience and creating these meaningful cultures. The studies show that companies and teams that do that, engage their people and are proactively, committed to shaping the culture, are anywhere from between 2 to 5 times more likely to hit targets, to delight customers, and also to engage and retain their own employees. We also know that 58% of performance is directly tied to emotional intelligence, which we're going to talk about on a couple of future episodes. I'm going to break down, that term emotional intelligence. What does it really mean? And then also we're going to talk about what are some keys to strengthening and building our emotional intelligence. But 58% of performance is tied to emotional intelligence, which means no matter what the task is or whatever it is your employees and your teammates are doing, it comes back to their own personal and social awareness, their ability to listen, and then what is the value of the response that they give. So all of this stuff is important to obviously connecting and engaging with our people and creating that meaningful culture together. So as always, let me leave you with some questions for you to ponder during this time. What are you doing? What are you as an individual or as a leader, what are you doing to build trust, to build those authentic relationships with your people? What are you doing to build trust in those authentic relationships with your people? Is it transparent? Are you sharing the kind of good and the challenges with them? Are you sharing? And if not, when are you going to share the good and be transparent about what's happening, the good stuff, the celebrations that's happening, but also the challenges that you all are facing? And are you showing empathy for the people throughout your organization, but then also not just stewing in what we're experiencing, but then bringing it back to, okay, based on our values, what are the next actions that we need to move it forward? And are you creating a participatory environment where everybody in your culture participates in the creation of the future that you are creating together? On the next episode, with all all the people that are quote unquote back to work or are still talking about this idea of remote work, I'm going to be reminding you all that culture is not your building. On the next episode, I'm going to talk about culture is not your building. Your building is important to your culture, and your building and physical environments are assets for your culture. But your culture is absolutely not your building. So let's make sure that we know what is your culture and how are you proactively shaping it together. Remember, the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet stimulate progress by recalibrating their thermostat, returning to what is that temperature that we're going to set, and then what are we going to proactively do intentionally together to shape the culture we want and set the temperature that we want together. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.